The walls shook. Red light cracked open across the ceiling of the Vatican necropolis. Dust fell into my mouth, bitter like ash. The bars in front of me trembled. Behind them, something moved. Wings. Huge. White once, but now torn and veined with blood. They slammed against iron like a storm. Every strike sent foul air rushing down the corridor, into my lungs. It wasn't smoke. It wasn't sulfur. It was older, like stone rot and old graves. The sound wasn't noise. It was song. A hymn. Too perfect. Too sharp. Each note cut through me. My chest felt like it was splitting open from the inside. I couldn't take it. I shouted into the dark. "What the fuck are you?" My voice broke, thin against the wings. But something heard me, and it answered. "You already know." The laugh slid into my ear like a knife. It didn't echo like the wings. It was close. Too close. I turned, but there was nothing. Only the sound, heavy in my head. My knees almost gave out. I forced myself upright, even as my teeth rattled from the vibration. Glass cracked overhead. A single high note split the air, sharp enough to slice. Every torch on the wall sputtered, then died. The chamber dropped into silence for half a breath. Then the cage began to glow. Red light spilled through the cracks, crawling across the floor like fire veins. Blood fell from the ceiling. At first, thin lines, almost like water dripping. Then heavier. Thicker. Each drop hit stone and hissed. It seared black scars where it landed. The rhythm matched the wings, pulse for pulse. A second heart beating over mine. I stepped back, but the corridor stretched forever. Tombs on both sides, swallowing me in. There was nowhere to go. The wings hit harder. Iron screamed. My chest locked. Every breath scraped like glass down my throat. The hymn rose higher. No words, just weight. It pressed down into my bones. My throat ripped open with sound I didn't mean to make. I felt it digging deeper, demanding something I couldn't give. Faith, belief, surrender. The cracks widened. Stone split like old bone. Red light poured in, flooding every shadow. The cage stood at the center. Its wings beat slow now, like it knew. Like it was waiting. Not to escape, to watch. To see me break. My body shook. I forced one breath, and another. The air was iron and blood. I could taste it. I wanted to run, but my feet locked in place. My voice rasped out before I could stop it. Before that night, I need to start at the beginning. My name is Robert Langston. I'm 45, electrical engineer, New York. Most days I'm under a street, inside a panel, or on a ladder where nobody looks up. I fix what people don't see. I make the dark stay quiet. It pays the mortgage. It lets me sleep. Then the Vatican called, and sleep left. The first email was clipped and formal, written like a contract that hopes you agree before you understand. They referenced underground grid systems, fault isolation, emergency rewiring after structural events. I told myself it was spam. 5 minutes later, my phone rang, a calm voice, Italian. He asked if I could travel. Urgent, confidential, well compensated. I should have said no. I didn't. 2 weeks later, I stood in St. Peter's Square, swallowed by sunlight and stone. The colonnades curved like arms around the crowd. Pilgrims lifted phones. Guides raised flags. It looked ordinary. If you listened to the bells, you could pretend nothing else sang below. Security treated me like I might evaporate, Badges, scanners, a bag check that took too long for what I carried. I kept telling myself it was policy. It didn't feel like policy. He waited past the second checkpoint. Black cassock, neat collar, face like still water. Father Alessandro Rossi. He didn't offer a hand. Mr. Langston. I tried for humor because it was easier than fear. You've got a lot of lights to fix, Father? No smile. He turned and walked. I followed, boots loud on stone. Incense thinned to dust, then to damp, then to something metallic I couldn't name. At a stairwell that fell into shadow, he stopped. Listen carefully. You must follow exactly. My joke died. He held up 2 fingers and began to count. First, don't ask more than 3 questions in a row. Second, don't touch the iron doors. Third, don't look through the bars. Fourth, if you hear singing, recite the prayer of St. Michael immediately. Fifth, if the lights flicker, leave. Do not wait. Do not return. I nodded like a contractor who's heard worse. Understood. Inside my head, the reaction snapped. These goddamn rules, just superstition. We went down. The temperature dropped with each landing. Water ticked somewhere unseen. The walls went from smooth to rough to brick, patched with iron staples that felt recent and wrong. Alessandro moved without sound. I kept pace because falling behind felt dangerous, and getting ahead felt worse. A plainclothes guard checked my badge without looking at my face. Another man watched from a doorway like furniture watches a room. I told myself it was the Vatican. Of course there were rules. Of course there were men to enforce them. We crossed the narrow view of the Vatican gardens, green after gray, a violent shift. Sun hit my eyes. That's when she stepped from the hedges. Black habit, hands folded. Eyes like someone who has already read the last page. You're not meant to be here. I stopped. Sister? She touched the cross at her chest. Some doors were never meant to be opened. Alessandro didn't rebuke her. He only slowed enough for me to follow. The sentence walked with me like a small nail under the skin. I didn't learn her name, Sister Teresa Valenti, until much later. The Apostolic Palace swallowed us. Candle wax and old polish in the air. Murals stared down with the patience of paint that's outlived its subjects. Silence had shape. It pressed the face. I found myself breathing through my nose like I was under a gaze. 2 Swiss guards stood at an archway, halberds upright. Alessandro spoke to neither. He led me into a chamber lined with red drapes where a desk sat like an altar. Behind it, Cardinal Vincenzo Rinaldi. Age hadn't softened him. His robe fell like a curtain, his hands were folded, tendons drawn. His eyes pinned me in place. Mr. Langston, he said, your work is narrow in scope. You will be given access only to what is required. You will complete your tasks quickly. I swallowed. Yes, Your Eminence. He didn't blink. Do what you are told. Don't ask questions. The sentence landed like a verdict. He turned a page, dismissed without the word. Alessandro walked faster after that. The palace thinned to service halls, then to stone. An iron door hummed like a transformer. I kept my hands off everything. How long will this take? He glanced at his watch. As long as it must. You bring in a lot of contractors? He didn't look at me. Very few. 2 technicians in gray passed with eyes down. One carried a coil of cable. The other cradled a wooden case like it might bleed. I wanted to ask what was inside. I counted my questions and kept them. A bronze door waited at the bottom of another flight. A guard unlocked it with 2 keys and a code I pretended not to see. Air spilled out that felt older than the corridor behind it. My forearms prickled. From this point, you will not speak unless necessary, Alessandro said. I nodded. It wasn't just obedience. The air didn't want words. We entered a maintenance passage that tasted like battery acid and wet dust. Conduit ran in straight lines. Someone had tried to tame the underground. The rock accepted the insult but didn't surrender. A junction box wore a hand-lettered tag. Scavvy Feed 3. Finally, something I understood. I opened my case, checked the tool roll by touch. "You want a ground fault test on Feed 3? He answered like a blessing. "We want the lights to stay on." I clipped the meter and watched numbers settle me like ordinary rain. Resistance high, voltage steady. But a tremor threaded the line as if something large kept stepping into the current, then lifting its foot away. I closed the box and followed him deeper. At a landing, a grill in the wall breathed cold air over my face. From beyond it, a sound rose and fell like breathing. Not wind, not water. Breath. I looked anywhere but the grill. Alessandro's stillness changed. He was bracing. "Mr. Langston, repeat the fourth rule." I wet my lips. "If I hear singing, I recite the prayer of St. Michael immediately." He inclined his head. "Yes." We kept moving. I started counting steps to anchor my mind. 38 to the next turn. 12 past a side door banded with iron. 24 down a ramp where the stones had slumped like tired shoulders. A rule written that precisely has a history written in someone else's blood. The passage opened on a small service nave with a bench and a sink and a stack of clean rags. A plaque in Latin hung above the basin. I read it wrong twice and let it be. The air on my teeth was cold. A man in a dark suit stood by the next door. American face, American haircut. The posture you keep when you remember the weight of a rifle. "Read," he said. "Thomas." "Langston," I said. "Robert." He looked past me to Alessandro, then back. "They say you're the grid guy." "That's me." One nod, calibrating. "Stay close and don't improvise." I should have bristled. I didn't. One other American made this feel almost like work. We moved again, past a stretch where the walls bowed as if something had pressed from the other side. My tools felt heavier. Time blurred into weight. Alessandro paused at a final staircase, placed his palm on the rail, and breathed once, like a diver checking depth. "From here, you follow me. If I stop, you stop. If I leave, you leave. Understood?" Reed glanced into the dark. "If it starts singing, you keep your mouth shut and your feet moving." The stairwell smelled like iron filings and old candles. I reached for ordinary thoughts. Conduit sizes, breaker charts. Numbers don't lie. But the underground doesn't answer to numbers. We descended. One floor, then another. The hum of the lines sank into my chest. The rules crowded my head like a litany. Don't ask, don't touch, don't look, pray if you hear it, leave if the lights flicker. The fifth rule paced me, heel for heel. At the bottom, a gate of bars waited, dark with age. Not a door, a boundary. Reed shifted for angles that don't exist underground. Alessandro spoke without turning. "One more thing, Mr. Langston." I swallowed. "Yes, Father?" He opened the small wicket in the gate. Cold air rolled over my face like a hand. "Whatever you think this is, it is not that." I wanted to ask then, what is it? I counted my questions and kept the last one. The gate clicked. The dark received us like water. The air changed the deeper we went. Less like stone, more like something that had been shut too long. The kind of smell you find in an old breaker room. Dust baked into metal. Insulation turned brittle. Only here, it carried weight, like breath. We passed the archives. Rows of shelves taller than houses, stacked with leather spines that looked fossilized. My boots tapped soft on marble. Reed muttered behind me, his voice low, as if the books were listening. I kept my eyes straight, because looking at the titles made me feel like I was intruding on secrets that wanted to stay asleep. Past the last arch, the descent turned harsher. Narrow halls, walls sweating damp. The necropolis waited below. I'd seen diagrams, maps from guidebooks, but no guidebook drew it like this. Corridors pressed thin, lined with tombs whose faces had been scraped smooth. A city of the dead, alive with silence. The first sound came faint, a thread at the edge of hearing. Too clear for wind, too smooth for water. It bent through the stone like a violin string played far away. I stopped without meaning to. My scalp prickled. Reed froze next to me. "Holy shit, did you hear that?" I whispered. He nodded once. Alessandro Rossi didn't. His face stayed stone. He lifted his hand like he was brushing dust from the air. "It's nothing, just the wind." Reed turned to him. His jaw was tight. "What the fuck is going on here, Rossi?" The priest didn't look at him. "Keep moving." We did, but the sound followed. Each turn it grew sharper, like a choir locked behind the walls. My brain clawed for an explanation. Acoustics, resonance in the tunnels, a transformer hum bleeding down through the stone. I listed them fast, one after another, because the alternative was admitting it was none of those things. We reached a junction where 3 corridors split like ribs. The bulbs overhead buzzed. One flickered, stuttering. I stared at it too long. My gut nodded. Reed's hand drifted near his jacket, where I knew a weapon waited. The flicker stopped, the bulb steadied. I exhaled, realizing I'd held breath until my chest burned. Alessandro finally spoke again. "You remember the rules." Reed glared at him. "You think repeating lines is going to help us if something's singing down here?" I raised both hands, palms out. "Let's just check the feed and get out." We moved deeper. The light dimmed to a red glow from lamps that weren't meant to look like fire but did. The walls closed tighter. Names etched in Latin blurred with time. My throat was dry. Every 20 steps the song quivered, higher now, like it knew we listened. The corridor widened suddenly into a chamber. A cracked mosaic glimmered under weak light. Saints and angels, eyes gouged, wings chipped. At the center stood a gate. Iron, blackened, crossbars thick as wrists. My pulse hammered. Behind it, something shifted. Not clear, only suggestion, like wings folding just beyond sight. I told myself it was a shadow, a trick of the lamps. My voice didn't believe it. "Jesus," I muttered, low. Reed's breath hissed out. "This isn't wind. This isn't normal. Tell us what's behind there, Father." Alessandro's reply was smooth, too smooth. "You will do your work, nothing more." The hymn rose, brushing my ears, soft as silk, heavy as chains. My knees trembled. I gripped the railing of the gate to anchor myself. It vibrated under my palms, faint but alive. I let go fast. Reed swore under his breath. His eyes flicked to me. "You still think this is just circuits humming?" I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I forced the words anyway. "There's got to be a system down here. Resonance, fault current echoing through the stone." The lie clanged in my throat. Reed knew it. Alessandro ignored it. A low crack ran through the chamber. Not stone breaking, not metal straining. It was closer to breath again, louder now, as if the walls themselves inhaled. The bulbs above us dimmed, swelled, then dimmed again. Reed's hand closed on my shoulder. "If it goes dark, we're gone." I nodded. My voice came out dry. Fine by me. We turned toward the panel set into the wall, marked with another feed number. I pulled my tools, hands clumsy, sweat slicking the handles. I pretended to read the gauge, to note the voltage. Truth was, I couldn't see numbers anymore. The song had taken the center of my skull, pressing out thought. It wavered, too close, like lips at my ear. Robert. I jerked, my tools clattered. Reed spun, gun half drawn. Alessandro stepped forward, hand raised. Ignore it. My skin went ice. My name, clear, in the voice I hadn't told myself I might hear. I wanted to believe it was Reed playing cruel, but his face was pale, eyes fixed on the gate. He hadn't spoken. The sound faded back into the hymn. My pulse stayed jagged. Reed's voice cracked hard. You're lying to us, Rossi. You brought us here knowing something's inside. Alessandro's silence was an answer sharper than words. He only gestured. Do your work. The hymn lifted again, almost joyful. My hand shook as I reached for the panel. Every screw I turned screamed like metal didn't want to move. Every flicker of the lamps carved shadows across the gate, stretching wings larger than they could be. My head pounded. Reed paced, muttering curses. His gun stayed out. He wasn't aiming yet, but it felt close. Alessandro stood like a statue, his lips moving too quiet to hear. A prayer, maybe, or something that sounded like one. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. Let's just finish, please. The hymn bent upward, the bulbs shook, and for the first time I saw it. Not full, not clear, just a feather. White at the edge, streaked with red. It fell through the bars like snow that bled, landed near my boot, burned out in ash. My throat closed. I couldn't move. Reed swore louder, words breaking. Alessandro finally lifted his eyes to me, expression still iron. Do not look closer. But I already had. The feather left a smear on the stone, faint but glowing, like coal under skin. The glow crawled outward, tracing lines across the floor, across the walls. The mosaic shivered as if heat rippled beneath it. I staggered back, chest heaving. Reed aimed his weapon at the bars. One more lie, Rossi, and I'll put a bullet through that gate. Alessandro's voice didn't rise. You cannot harm what is beyond. The hymn shifted again, deeper, notes dropping like anchors into my chest. My knees shook. My tools felt heavier than iron. I pressed my hands to my ears. It didn't help. The sound was inside, not outside. I wanted to scream. Instead, my voice cracked into the air. This isn't science anymore. The lamp stuttered. The chamber filled with shadows that moved the wrong way, away from the light instead of toward it. I thought of the rules, all 5 of them, running in my head like beads on a chain. Don't ask, don't touch, don't look. Pray if you hear it. Leave if the lights flicker. And the lights were flickering now. Reed's voice came sharp. We're leaving, now. Alessandro didn't flinch. You will stay until the work is done. Reed raised the weapon, finger trembling on the trigger. I don't take orders from liars. The hymn spiked higher, as if amused. I bent double, palms on my knees, gasping. The sound wasn't only in my head anymore. It shook the stones, made the dust dance in the air. My breath came ragged, each inhale cut with iron. Please, both of you, stop shouting. They didn't hear me. Or maybe they did, but the song was louder than reason. Another feather drifted through the bars. It fell slow, glowing faint red. Reed tracked it with the muzzle of his gun. When it touched the floor, the stone hissed. A crack opened like a mouth, bleeding light. I stumbled back, boot scraping loud. Oh God, it's real! Alessandro closed his eyes, whispering words I couldn't catch. Not English, not Latin I knew. Something older. His lips moved like prayer, but his tone was too steady, too measured. Reed noticed. His eyes narrowed. "You're not praying. You're feeding it. Tell me the truth, Father. Tell me what the fuck is locked in there." The priest finally opened his eyes. His calmness was worse than panic. "You are not ready to know." Reed snapped, voice cracking. "Then we're dead already!" The chamber still rang with echoes when Alessandro pressed the folder into my chest. My arms stiffened as though I had taken a weight I could never put down. Reed circled near the gate, weapon drawn, eyes darting like a wolf trapped in stone. The air tasted like dust and iron. My throat burned. Still, I opened it. The cover rasped under my thumb. Project Seraphim. The words alone hollowed my stomach. I turned the page and felt the blood drain out of me. Subject recovered beneath Basilica excavation, 1893. Codename, Seraphim. It was written as if they were cataloging a mineral sample, not something alive. Not something that sang. I swallowed hard, flipped faster. Typed lines mixed with inked notes in Latin, some blurred by water stains, some crossed out as if even ink couldn't hold them. Pages described exposure tests, how men stationed near the cage reported hearing voices. Subject projects command through song, one note read. Primary symptom? Compulsion to kneel. My breath caught. Jesus Christ, this can't be real. Reed leaned over, his eyes catching the words like fire on oil. His jaw set hard. He snapped toward Alessandro, shoving him back against stone. "You son of a bitch! You used us!" The priest's face did not flinch. His voice was slow, steady. "Demons we can fight. Angels, they can make us believe. And belief can burn the world." The words dropped like a curse. Reed's grip on the pistol tightened. My pulse hammered. The hymn trembled, faint, as though amused by the tension between us. I bent low, scanning more pages spread across the floor. One sheet shook in my hands. A transcript. A guard's testimony from 1921. I read the line aloud before I could stop myself. He said the angel spoke in his own voice, told him to kneel. Reed cursed under his breath. His fury snapped back at Alessandro. You knew what this thing does, and you still brought us down here." Alessandro's tone stayed flat, colder than the stone around us. "Because only those unprepared can prove resistance. You are men of reason, of earth. If you falter, then all men will." Reed shoved the gun barrel under his chin. His voice cracked into rage. "You bastards turned us into bait!" The hymn pressed harder, words vibrating in my teeth. I tried to breathe slow. My chest felt like it was collapsing. I stared at diagrams in the file, sketches of cages built, rebuilt, collapsed. Margins filled with words like resonance, containment integrity, sacred geometry. One page ended in smeared ink, but the last words were clear. Song breached iron. "It broke the cage before," I whispered. "It already broke free once." Reed turned to me, fury still lit. "And they hid it! They covered it up!" Alessandro finally stooped, lifting another sheet. His voice was cold as stone as he read. Test 72. Subject remained silent until provoked. When hymn began, observer collapsed, screaming that light poured into his skull. Subject ceased only when heart stopped. He folded the page, then chose another. Test 103. A child of 12 brought within chamber. Subject's song ceased instantly. Witnesses recorded sensation of joy so strong it left them weeping. When child removed, 3 priests begged to remain, crying that they had seen heaven. Reed's voice tore open. "You experimented on children? Jesus Christ, you're worse than the thing you keep!" Alessandro's face flickered with something, shame or grief, but his voice steadied. "It was not my hand. But the records remain, and so does the truth." My chest squeezed. I couldn't breathe right. The folder swam in my hands. My voice cracked low. "This isn't research. It's worship." The hymn rippled, as if pleased. I clamped my hands over my ears. Reed's gun wavered between Alessandro and the gate. His voice shattered. "Tell me how many you fed to it. Tell me why we're still here." Alessandro raised another sheet, his voice rising into a chant, words carved by time. "Test 200. The subject was silent for 3 days. On the 4th, song began in the absence of witnesses. Every bell in the city tolled at once. Record concludes. Containment may be failing." The page shook in his hand. He dropped it. His eyes locked to mine. "You are not here by chance. You are here because the pattern repeats. The angel grows stronger. And if you fall, so does everything." I staggered back, head pounding. My voice broke apart. "Why me? I'm nobody. I'm not holy. I'm not strong. I'm just a man with tools." Reed spat, eyes burning. "Exactly. You picked him because he's disposable. An American no one will miss." Alessandro flinched, but only for a breath. His whisper came low. "Because he does not belong. If he resists, then all men can resist." The hymn rose, a tide that filled marrow. My pulse skipped. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pray. My mind tore in 2 directions, science clawing at resonance, at vibration, at acoustics, while something older whispered that it was faith, and faith was enough to burn me alive. I pressed the folder against my chest, trembling. My knees scraped stone. My voice rasped, broken. I can't hold it back. I can't even hold myself. Reed's fury cracked into something brittle, almost begging. "Then what the hell are we doing here? Tell me, Father. Tell me before I put a bullet through your skull." Alessandro stood taller, voice iron, words echoing. "Because choice is the last test. To believe or to refuse." The hymn thundered, louder than blood, louder than breath. The chamber pulsed, and all 3 of us knew the choice was no longer mine alone. It was the world's, and then the cage answered. The first true note rose from the cage like the tearing of the world. Not faint anymore, not whispers. A voice that filled stone, marrow, memory. The hymn broke into a roar of beauty that was not beauty. The lamps burst overhead, light shattered, shards rained in streaks of fire. The crucifix on the far wall twisted, iron bending until the arms flipped downward. Every painting lining the corridor ran black, saints drowning in shadow. The floor heaved as if the tombs below were breathing. Mirrors set in old gilt frames cracked wide, spiderweb lines crawling outward until my own reflection collapsed into fragments. Reed fired without hesitation. The muzzle flare lit his face white, eyes wide with terror. His voice split the hymn. "God damn it, I'm not dying here!" The bullet struck iron. The gate shrieked. The hymn didn't falter. A shadow like a wing whipped outward, slicing through air faster than sight. Reed screamed once, high and sharp. His chest caved inward, ribs snapping like twigs. Another strike. His body folded backwards, limbs bent wrong, blood spraying in arcs across stone. For a heartbeat, he was still alive, eyes locked on mine, mouth forming a curse that never left. Then his body ripped apart, torn into ribbons of ash that dissolved before they touched the floor. The echo of his scream didn't fade. It multiplied. From the corners of the chamber, I saw myself again. Another Robert, sweat-soaked, eyes wide, mouth twisted open in a scream. Then another, and another. A circle of me, closing in, each shouting words I couldn't hear. My chest pounded. My knees buckled. They weren't shadows. They were solid. Each one wore my face, my fear. Their voices collided into a chorus of madness. Some cried. Some laughed. One beat his head against the wall until his skull cracked. Another clawed at his throat, choking himself. I turned in circles and there was no escape. Every direction, myself, screaming my end. Alessandro collapsed to the floor, his voice rising in a prayer that wasn't prayer. Not Latin I knew. The syllables bent backward, each word spoken as if dragged in reverse. In nomine retro sanctus invertus. The words grew longer, twisted deeper, until it sounded like the earth itself was praying in reverse. His voice cracked but did not stop. Blood leaked from his nose. His eyes rolled back until only white showed. Still he chanted, each line heavier, darker. Gloria contra lux obscura Deus cadens. The crucifix overhead cracked, the wood bleeding. His prayer wound itself around the hymn, a rope of defiance spoken backward. The seraphim's song laughed through it, bright and cruel, pressing against his words like claws through flesh. I clutched my ears, but the doppelgangers of me only screamed louder. Their mouths foamed red. Their voices were my own, twisted higher, broken by sobs. My thoughts drowned. My throat tore raw. "Tell me what the fuck you are!" The answer came in laughter. Not loud, but near, right behind my ear. But you've always known. The voice chilled every nerve. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't fire. It was intimacy, soft and amused, as if mocking me for asking. My copies froze, mouths still open, eyes fixed. One by one, they turned their heads toward me, jaws unhinging farther than human. I stumbled back, slamming into the iron bars. Heat seared through my spine. The hymn flared again, the chamber walls bending inward like ribs closing around us. I couldn't breathe. Every copy of me began to laugh. My own laugh. Dozens of voices, all mine, breaking in unison. The ground split under my boots. Firelight rose through the cracks. Symbols glowed crimson, twisting into impossible shapes. Angles bent wrong, shifting whenever I blinked. The copies surged forward. Hands like mine grabbed my arms, pulling, tearing. Their nails scraped blood. One shoved me to the ground, pinning me with my own weight. Another leaned close, my own face snarling, spitting words I couldn't understand. Their mouths unhinged wider, black maws spilling smoke into my lungs. I choked. My chest burned. Alessandro's chant grew louder, manic. Non credo, sed credo, anima fracta, lumen cadens. The words twisted sense, saying and unsaying, belief inverted. His body convulsed, hands tearing at his chest as he screamed the prayer backward. His voice shredded, but still he forced each word through blood. The sound cracked mirrors until no reflection survived. The painted saints melted into walls, eyes hollow, mouths bleeding. The cage bars glowed red, veins of fire crawling through iron. From within, something vast pressed forward. The hint of feathers, white, shredded by blood. The laughter returned, closer, tickling my eardrum. I could smell it. Copper and ash, feathers burning. I screamed again, though I don't know what words escaped. The sound was swallowed by the hymn. My doubles surged closer, their faces splitting open into black maws. Hands that were my hands reached for me. Nails that were my nails scratched my arms. Their breath burned my face. My heart hammered. I felt it cracking. The hymn coiled tighter, pressing me toward surrender. The voice whispered once more, "Kneel." My legs buckled, but rage snapped through me. I forced them straight. My chest heaved. My voice tore raw with fury. "I won't!" The laughter came again, endless. The chamber walls bent farther, twisting crucifixes upside down. Candles sputtered, flames bleeding blue. The faces of saints peeled from stone, leaving blank flesh behind. My copies screamed louder, breaking into soundless mouths. One lunged and bit my arm, teeth sinking into flesh. I screamed as my own mouth tore into me. The seraphim sang higher, until glass, iron, bone all trembled as one. Alessandro's prayer faltered, his body shuddering, but he forced the last words through. His voice splintered, rising in a howl of backward faith. The hymn mocked him, louder, brighter, shaking heaven and hell in the same breath. I was left standing in the center, surrounded by myself, drowning in laughter that was mine and not mine. My vision spun, my body broke, and the seraphims sang, its voice tearing through creation itself. White walls, disinfectant, the steady beep of a monitor. I woke with tubes in my arm and light stabbing my eyes. Rome. Hospital. I tried to sit up, but my chest screamed. Pain lanced through ribs that felt broken. A nurse leaned over, her voice soft, careful. "Don't move. You're safe now." Safe. The word meant nothing. My memory was fire and feathers, mirrors splitting, my own face screaming back at me. I closed my eyes and wished the world would stop. They told me it had been 3 days. Collapse in the necropolis, they said. Gas pocket. Old stone. A tragedy. That's what the Vatican told the papers. Nothing more. Just a collapse. But I knew. I had seen Reed torn apart. I had heard Alessandro pray backward until his voice bled. I had heard the laughter. I had heard my own voice laugh with it. They tried to keep me under watch. A priest came to the room, quiet, offering blessing. I turned my face to the wall and didn't answer. When night came, I pulled the tubes out and signed my name on the release, though my hand trembled like it wasn't mine. I left without looking back. The air outside stank of rain on stone. I swore I would never set foot in Rome again. New York met me with the stink of exhaust, the weight of noise. I told myself it was freedom, skyscrapers instead of catacombs, concrete instead of crypts, crowds so loud they could drown memory. I rented a small place near Queens, a view of nothing. I kept the lights on at night. I told myself it was enough. Weeks passed. I worked small jobs, wiring apartments, fixing panels, anything that kept my hands busy. But quiet always found me, in the hum of a transformer, in the static of a radio. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I felt feathers brush my cheek. I woke drenched in sweat. I avoided churches. I walked blocks out of my way to keep their steeples from sight. When bells rang across the city, I pressed my palms to my ears. Still, sometimes, I swore I heard something under the chime. A note too pure. A note that did not stop. One morning, I sat in a diner in Midtown. Coffee cooling, neon buzzing overhead. Then the jukebox stuttered, the music warping, the voice of a singer bending until one note held too long. My spoon rattled on the table. No one else noticed. They kept eating, talking. I left my food and stumbled into the street. I thought maybe it was only when things went quiet. I was wrong. The first time it reached me through the phone, I nearly dropped it. Static burst in my ear, then a single clear note threaded through the line. Not the caller's voice, not human. I hung up. The dial tone kept humming long after. Even with the cord pulled out of the wall, the note still played. I smashed the phone. That night I didn't sleep. The first time it reached me through the phone, I nearly dropped it. Static burst in my ear, then a single clear note threaded through the line. Not the caller's voice, not human. I hung up. The dial tone kept humming long after. Even with the cord pulled out of the wall, the note still played. I smashed the phone. That night I didn't sleep, but nothing compared to that night in Grand Central. I left late from a repair near Midtown. Rain slicked the streets, neon smearing across puddles. I cut through the station, down to the 42nd Street platform. The tunnels breathed hot air, the crowd thinned, the noise dulled. That's when I heard it. Faint, far down the tunnel, a note stretched too perfect to be human. Not loud, but enough. My blood froze. The rails hummed as if singing with it. I turned, heart hammering. The crowd was gone, only me and the echo, the same pitch I had heard in Rome, the same hymn that had broken stone. It was here. The lights flickered. A train passed. For a split second, in the glass of the windows, I saw them. Reflections of me. Dozens. Their mouths open, laughing. When the train was gone, the platform was empty. Only me and the sound. I wasn't alone. A man sat slumped on a bench, a blanket over his shoulders. A face rough with years. His lips moved, too quiet to hear. I took one step closer. He was humming the same note. My knees locked. "Stop," I whispered. My voice barely broke the air. "Please, stop." He turned his eyes on me, clouded but sharp. His lips parted. "Do you hear it too?" I stumbled back, breath gone. He chuckled, low, broken. "It never leaves. Not here. Not anywhere." The hymn swelled, vibrating through the steel beams. He bowed his head as if in prayer, humming the note louder. I ran. My throat cracked as I gasped. Holy shit! It followed me to New York. The note lingered, almost playful. A laugh tucked inside it. I backed toward the stairs, feet clumsy, chest shaking. My reflection in the dark glass of the subway doors wavered. For a second, it smiled when I didn't. The hymn swelled once more, rolling through iron and stone, filling the tunnel. I stumbled into the street, rain washing my face, breath tearing out of me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to believe it was memory. But memory doesn't hum through iron rails. Memory doesn't laugh. I stayed awake the rest of the night, pacing the apartment, lights on, TV blaring static. Nothing drowned it. Somewhere under the city, the echo still sang. Now I sit here, recording this, my hands trembling. I tell myself New York is not Rome. I tell myself America is far from the Vatican. But distance means nothing Walls mean nothing. Belief travels. Songs don't stay buried. Sometimes, when the city sleeps, I swear I hear it moving through the grid, through power lines, through steam pipes, through tunnels carved long before I was born. Sometimes I think it's not following me at all. Maybe it was always here. Maybe Rome was just the first place we looked. I'll never set foot in the Vatican again. But the Vatican may no longer be the only place.